Hello and welcome to the Daily Dose. Today, in I'm Going Through Some Stuff, we are talking about jealousy. The earliest memory of jealousy for me was when I was maybe 3 or 4. I was at daycare and a kid in my daycare got this gum that I really wanted. I wanted it so bad. I was so jealous. I remember having angry thoughts towards this other 3 or 4-year-old boy. And it's so awful and petty that I even remember this. Maybe you waited until you were 6 or 15 to be jealous. Nope, I basically came out of the womb being jealous. And now it seems so much worse because there are multi-billion-dollar companies out there creating media platforms that are basically just one big comparison tool. Hey everybody, here is all the fun, expensive, good-looking things, people, and places that you are not. Have a nice day. Well, it's no wonder to me that the Bible addresses jealousy so early on. When Moses was receiving the 10 commandments from God, God gave Moses the 10th commandment and said, "You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor." This had to be very appropriate for the day as the Israelites, who were just freed from slavery and oppression from the Egyptians, were wanting to go back. They wanted to go back into slavery. They wanted what they didn't have. They wanted what they had in slavery, of all places. Can you imagine that? So God says, do not covet these things. Wait a second. What does covet mean? I don't use that in my vocabulary other than for things like this anymore. Covet means to yearn, to possess or have something. It's jealousy. I yearn to have that car. I yearn to live in that house. I yearn to have that lifestyle. I yearn to have this and this and this and this and this. It reminds me of television kids who are whining and wanting this. Gimme, right? And when we watch it on TV, it's like, oh, that's so ridiculous. And then we go on a drive or go online and we do the same thing, don't we? And you're certainly not alone. Like I said, I started at an early age. So what do we do about it? I like to use this quote from Theodore Roosevelt for my kids and my family. Comparison is the thief of joy. Or a couple of Bible verses. Proverbs 14:30 says, "A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones." Job 5:2 says, "Surely resentment destroys the fool, and jealousy kills the simple." Well, that sounds just plain awful. I do not want my bones to rot, and I do not want to be killed. It's a very clear stance on what jealousy does to us. And I love this very familiar verse. I'm sure you've heard it from 1 Corinthians 13:4. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It doesn't envy. I love the imagery of this love. We all want to love and to be loved. And Paul is saying here in 1 Corinthians that true love does not envy. It is not jealous. Well, even though I wanted that candy as a very young boy, my bones have not yet rotted. So what does it really do? What does jealousy do to us if my bones are not yet rotting? Going back to the quote I said earlier, comparison or envy or jealousy is the thief of joy. It steals our joy. Where does joy come from? It comes from God. Jealousy steals what we have right here, right now. When we are stuck coveting what our neighbors have, whether they're physically living right next to us or across the world that we found on the internet, we lose all delight in what God has given us. And personally, if I lose sight of the friends, the family, the money, the car, the gifts, the talents that I do have, do I really deserve them at all? Friends, we have been given so much. What would happen if we took time to honor those things that we have been given? To be grateful for these things? What if we use the time and the energy spent on lusting after other people's lives, things, monies, bodies, and started putting that into our own lives? What would happen if we would bless our own lives, love harder on our own families, work harder at our own jobs and our own gifts, spent more time volunteering and giving to our churches, took better care of our own possessions, worked harder at eating better and moving more, were more intentional with our own resources? If we all took time to stay in our own lane and gave our energy to that, what would A, realize how much we have already been given, and B, with that time and energy given, we would create a life so beautiful and so life-giving that we would not even dare to think about wanting someone else's again. I was just reflecting to my wife, Britta, about how I so often see that people need to take breaks from social media for their mental health, and how I just don't really feel that way about how I view social media. I think if that's what you need to do, more power to you, take that time. But for me, I just don't think about it that way. Part of it is what I just said. I'm doing what I love with whom I love every single day. Yes, of course, I would love a trip to Tahiti, and I would love to drive a vehicle that doesn't need to get worked on every other week. But it's just part of the journey for me. And I know that it'll work itself out. And I have to mention that what we see online or as we pass by, it's just part of the story. It can be cropped, it can be highlighted, it can be filtered. I think when we compare ourselves to others, we give God the short end of the stick. What are you doing, God? Why don't I have that? Do you even love me? Jealousy to me is the opposite of trust. I know that God is working and that what is in life is available to me if I trust God and become the person that I need to be. I keep hearing this about money. If you invest $10 and you lose $10, you'll invest $10,000 and lose $10,000. I'm not saying this is necessarily theological. You'll have to ask Angie or Hans. But if I'm not honoring my money now, I don't feel like I deserve more. And if I'm not honoring my talents now, I wouldn't if I was big time. If I'm not taking care of my family now, you get the picture. In my mind, I need to become the person who can handle and honor more before it comes to me, or else I'll just lose it anyway. You know that most people who win the lottery end up going back to not having any of that money and often being poorer than they were before they had even won the millions of dollars. We need to become people who can handle that kind of money, that kind of life before we are given it, or we will just lose it. And so most of the time, I'm just too busy living my life, living the things and loving the things that God has given me to be yearning for somebody else's life. God has given you a life and a purpose and has blessed you so deeply. Spend some time today thanking God for all you've been given. Thank you so much for joining us. If you watch this on Facebook, we would love it if you would share it. If this has blessed your life or can help others, we would love if you'd subscribe on YouTube or invite somebody to watch on television with you today. Thank you. Take care.